Gamers, gals, non-binary pals. If there's one thing I love to talk about, it's complaining about Yu-Gi-Oh! I love complaining about Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Complaining is so fun because all I get to do is just shit on my favorite game. It's actually not my favorite game. My favorite game is Honey Pop 2. Anyways, if you guys were not aware, YCS Indiana took place recently, and let's just say there was a lot of Snake Eye in top 32. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 out of top 32. That is a 75% representation. Yippee! I love Yu-Gi-Oh! The closest we've had to this was exactly like Tier Limit. Tier 0, it's been Tier 0 for a long time. I don't know what to tell you. A lot of people were kind of thinking like, oh, Voice was Voice, or like Melodious, or Branded might be able to stand a chance. The unfortunate reality, we kind of just had a relatively larger gap than usual between premiere events, as well as the fact that a lot of the quote-unquote premiere events that have been going on were things like the Spanish National, which had like Virtual World win. Like, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't take Spanish WCQs to mean, you know, the craziest amount in terms of competitive placing. But when we look at this list, it really is just like, here's a runic stun list, here's a runic stun list, and here's a bunch of random garbage. You Americans are so uncreative. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry that people want to play the best deck. What do you want? Outside of, you know, Snake Eye being, you know, this very cringe, frustrating deck, got a lot of people really talking about what Snake Eye's role in the metagame should be. Should it be hit? What should we do about it? And good old White Knight himself, Mr. Mono Bluetron, swoops in to save the day and give us his Twitter take. So I want to give it a little read through, just give you his thoughts, my thoughts. This isn't really structured, it's just me kind of ripping. Been seeing nothing about dooming about snakes. People talking about how over-centralizing it is, how we need to emergency ban Poplar, etc. Those people aren't wrong, but I don't think the solution is just ban snakes. I think our current problem betrays a big issue in card design. As you go down the list of playable decks, you'll find a common theme. Each deck has a starter, a card that if it resolves usually wins the game, and if it fails to resolve often loses the game. The rest of the deck's often filled with cards that protect their linear combo, such as the same 12 to 21 pieces of non-engine. The selling point for decks is how effectively they can navigate this fundamental principle. Stakes has 2 must-negate starters, Tenpai has a field spell that makes your starter have to resolve, and Melodious has a Gamma to contest the answer to your answer. So he is true in the sense, I mean, not every deck has, you know, a card where it's like, oh, if this card resolves, you automatically win the game. But it does put you in a very overwhelming position. Like, we're not going to pretend that resolving a Branded Fusion or resolving an Ostinato is automatically going to win you the game. So what I'm understanding is it's a sustainable business model to just start robbing Snake Eyes players for their cards. That's wrong. You should have been doing that 6 months ago, because that's when the Snake Eye deck was actually worth money. Now it's like $600. Let me get a shout out to Jesse, by the way. Sorry, bro, you really should have just picked up Tenpai or something. For me, this paradox is a failure of design. Cards like Snake Eye Ash are so strong that you warp your entire deck around them, but so weak that it can often be countered by 1-for-1 hand traps. To echo Josh, this moves towards 1-card combos, and lots of power concentrated in very few cards is a deliberate design goal and responsible for the check hands feeling that a lot of players report. This is like kind of true. The way how Yu-Gi-Oh kind of progresses every couple years is there will usually be one format where there's like a lot of decks relevant, and it'll be like a control deck or a combo deck or a stun deck or something. Then something will be released that makes a deck really good. Think of like the Fire King structure deck or like Poplar. It will just make the deck steadily better, way better, way better. And like towards the end of the format, you just get this horrible abomination of just like random bullshit cards that are just so obscenely broken. You know what I mean? Like, think of like the end of Tier Limit format where just the tier engine plus like maybe 9 to 12 non-engine slots, which were usually just played as additional extenders because tier was just one of those decks. Like, that was a deck that was actually like terrorism. And then Yu-Gi-Oh will do like a big reset by either releasing a new archetype, but that new archetype is going to be way better than whatever the current stuff is, or whatever the old cycle's best deck was. It's gonna be like a little bit better, and then you sort of get like this weird peak graph again, and then it'll drop again, and then it'll go back again, then it'll drop a little bit more, and then you realize like 2 years later, like the best deck Like the most mid deck now, if you took it back like 3 years, would probably be like a tier 0 deck right now. And the way a lot of these decks have been, you know, just propagated is through the 1-card combo. Think of like Wanted Search DML Star. That thing is like full combo plus a random draw. Think of like Snake Eye Ash. The card is a 1-card +7 with like no exaggeration. And when you print archetypes that are able to do so much off of like one singular card, or you're able to print decks that are able to just extend into infinity, you kind of reach this paradigm where players are forced to just do ridiculous things in order to counteract the metagame. The easiest example like right now is think of like every single deck running at minimum like 12 to 15 hand traps, because like that's the absolute minimum you can get away with running if you are forced to go second versus something like Snake Eye, you know? It very much leads to this very shitty dichotomy of both players feeling like each game is kind of in this weird flowchart where, did I open 2 hand traps? Well, I better hope they bricked, otherwise I lose. Or if I did open 2+ hand traps, I hope I drew an engine piece and they didn't open one of their 12 hand traps, because otherwise I just lose. And it's just like this weird shitty back and forth, blah 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 blah. It's so annoying. Now don't get me wrong, there's still tons of room for skill expression in this format. Deck building, navigating established boards representing different pieces of non-engine, which is why the top players seem pretty locked in. It just means that the way games play out aren't exciting from the perspective of viewers, and can feel frustrating even for players who are kicking ass and taking names. Yes, Snake Eye is better than anything else and action should be taken, but unless we deviate from this type of 1-card design, it's just gonna repeat again in 3 months. That is true. Unfortunately, just to be completely fucking honest, Yu-Gi-Oh has been in an era of extremely pushed 1-card or 1.5 card design space for the past 3 years. Like, if you want to say Virtual World is a fair deck because it required 2 cards, like, sure, man, go for it. I mean, one of those cards is literally just Raigeki Break. And if you had opened like any specific 2-card combination, you could end on double VFD. Where some of the issue does lie in the fact that 1-card starters do exist, a lot of it also stems from the fact that Konami does have to print more powerful archetypes as a byproduct of power creep and the way the game is currently laid out. Like, when you think about it, Konami is not like Pokemon or like standard Magic the Gathering. If Konami prints an archetype that's like mediocre or just not good enough, it's just going to be completely forgotten, or people are just going to be like, yeah, but why would I play Melodious when I could just play like Snake Eye, you know what I mean? Like when Sword Soul came out, everyone and their fucking moms was like, holy shit, this is like the greatest deck of our generation. Having a deck with 1.5 card starters was just absolutely insane, especially when able to play again 12 to 15 pieces of non-engine. For better and for worse, Yu-Gi-Oh being this explosive is just the actual representation of what Yu-Gi-Oh is. Yu-Gi-Oh is no longer this grindy resource game where we could play like engine versus engine or whatever. The tier limit mirror was like kind of cool, at least for, you know, people who exactly only play tier, because you could actually play engine versus engine because you were able to do stuff on both players' turns, that sort of, you know, wacky shenanigans. And the main problem with decks with too powerful of engines is that, spoiler alerts, when you end up with an engine that's actually like able to survive purely on its own, it ends up being an engine that you can play on like both players' turns and ends up being this super unfun, shitty experience. Think of like adventure prank kids of like DP. Think of Sky Striker when it had triple engage and was at like max power and was being splashed into like Dark Warrior, or like Orchist Sky Striker. Oh my god, that shit was actually heinous. And if you make tight and compact engines, the reality is that like these engines are going to be forced to have 1-card starters, but these 1-card starters are so heavily pushed that it does kind of feel like you're getting the world of a block of cheese whenever you like resolve a Snake Eye Ash search. You're just like super sad all of a sudden. I heard there was a deck based around Dark Aquas that was successful despite going entirely against this principle. Perhaps we should re-explore that team. Yeah, the main issue of tier was that every card ended up being a starter, so it didn't really fucking matter. It was like, yeah, you know, tier technically doesn't have any 1-card starters, and then you like normal summon to Merly and like hit a shuffler and a miller and a tier name, and you just like lost on the spot. As well as the fact that tier limit was very much a deck that, although it was a tier 0 deck and had like a healthy mirror match, it was just so headed above everything else, like what the fuck was the point? Like there is no easy solution to be like, oh, what's the solution to like the one card starter problem? What's the solution to the sort of decks being too strong? Spoiler alerts, I'll tell you guys right now, there is no solution. The reality is that this game has just taken way too aggressive of a hold in regards to card design, and this is just the reality of the game. This is unfortunately just the reality of what Yu-Gi-Oh is. Tearlamid is a deck that's just unfortunately never gonna get unbanned, but we probably will see some flavor of deck with like 35 engine pieces, but you can play random garbage extenders because they naturally synergize and the engine can answer literally every threat, and we'll end up in this shitty tier 0 threat all over again. I know this is kind of doomer, but let me know your thoughts on like one card starters, the progression of Yu-Gi-Oh, and how it's sort of developed over the years. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section down below. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this video.